it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to be doing a little bit more DIYing to create a really fun, kind of clean and simple card, but I really think I love the end look of this one. So I'm going to be turning this card landscape today. It is a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card base, and we are going to be going straight onto the card base today. I have some acetate sheets here. These ones are from Hero Arts because they work well with die cutting, and I've showed this in a video before. There are 2 different types of acetate that I use, and this is the one that I always use when I come to die cutting because I really don't like the frustration of pulling out some acetate and not knowing if it's going to die cut or not. So this is one that I found die cuts well, and I'm going to use it today with some square dies. Now I have 3 different sizes here. These ones actually have stitching on them, but it's not going to matter because they are stitched on the inside and I only want the outside for today. So you can see I have basically created my own stencil with the squares. I'm going to be using some squeezed lemonade, spun sugar and spiced marmalade as my inks today with some finger daubers. Now use whatever inks you have. Again, you can always use different mediums. You don't have to use inks, just use whatever you feel comfortable using. And I always have a piece of scrap paper off over to the side of me to check where my ink daubers are at before I go and use them for the first time, because I don't know if I put them back into the container loaded up with ink or if they were completely dry. I always want to test out where they're at. And I also don't know how dry or re-inked my ink pad is. I forget when I last re-inked them, so it's really good for me. I always go and try it out so that I don't get a surprise when I'm working on my project. Now I use the bigger square there with the spiced marmalade, the orange colour, and the blending is not even perfect. I tried to go a little bit darker on a couple of the corners, but honestly it doesn't even matter in the end. I'm doing a little bit of the pink. I've kind of gone for some light-ish colours here because I will do some stamping on these. And I'm just trying to change up the colours so that 2 of the same colour aren't really next to each other. And I also am trying to use some variation by going smaller and bigger squares next to each other as well. But these are all random placement. There's no rhyme or reason as to where I am putting them, and I'm just switching in between the colours as I want to. Now I will say I got to this point here and was kind of like, there's not enough squares and it doesn't kind of look balanced. However, I don't want the big squares that I've die cut. Even the little square that I die cut wasn't small enough. So here I just need 1 or 2 of these. So I'm just using some low tack tape. Use some washi tape, use some scrap pieces of paper, whatever you want to use. This is just really quick and simple. I'm making a very simple small square that I can do a little bit of ink blending through. Now if you have a die and you don't feel comfortable doing this, then go for gold, use that too. Just whatever works. I just wanted this to be a nice quick little fix for needing a smaller square. It doesn't have to last long. So I'm going to pop this in a couple of little places and then again just use the same colours and pop them here and there just to fill it out a little bit more. Now, as I said, you could stop at any kind of place and point in this card making journey and it would be fine. But I am going to kind of keep going and add a few little bits and pieces. First up, I have a couple of clear stamp sets. This one is the Paisley Days, and I'm going to use a couple of different pieces out of here. This one, the Kaisercraft one, is a silicone stamp set, so it has a really low price point, which is great. And then I'll use the butterfly out of the woodware one, and then my favourite, you guys know, the BoBunny Wildflowers stamp set. But trust me when I say, look through your stash and you will find the perfect little stamps to go in these squares, I promise you. Now, I am actually stamping these and I don't want them to fit inside the squares. I want them to be coming off the edges a little bit. So that's what I'm picking the stamps for. I promise you, you'll have some in your stash that will work really well. Now, here's the thing. I was using my Oxides to blend the ink. However, I'm going to shift over my VersaFine clear inks and I'll show you exactly why. So I have kind of, not the equivalent, but I have a yellow, a pink, and an orange in both the Oxides and the VersaFine clear. Now this stamp is a silicone stamp and they can sometimes be trickier. But it's the stamp that I want to use. So I just want to show you quickly, if I ink it up really well in the Oxide ink, and I kind of press it down, give it a moment for the ink to transfer onto the paper, And even though some of the ink didn't transfer really well, even where it did transfer, it's really fuzzy and kind of blotchy. So when I stamp it into the VersaFine Clair, which is a pigment ink, which is great for stamping, even with a silicone stamp, I get a really good impression. So that's just a quick little comparison there. And I mean, all stamps kind of react differently. Even I find some photopolymer stamps work different to other photopolymer stamps, and again, the same with the silicone ones. So this just helps be able to use all of my range of stamps and make them look good still. And so that is why I've chosen really carefully the 3 different types of ink sets that I've chosen to use in my crafting. So I've chosen them really carefully for very kind of specific properties. Now, choosing inks is not an easy thing at all, and that's a whole nother video. But anyway, I am just stamping off with the pink ink because it was so bright, and so it's kind of actually a 2nd generation stamp. And then I'm stamping straight down with the orange there, and you can see I have stamped off to the edge. The butterfly and things are coming off the edge, and so are the flowers. And then I'm going to create a really simple frame, but this packs a lot of punch, and that's important. So I'm using some stacked rectangle dies. These ones happen to be from the Hero Arts Infinity die set, and this is how I pop them together. I just use a little bit of that mint tape, and I have cut out 2 rectangles. I am going to glue these together because one rectangle was just not quite enough and not quite bold enough. So 2 stacking together are really good. You can perhaps even try 3, or if you don't want to cut out more than 1, then you could always add a little bit of foam behind as well. I am going to show you these one last time because these are my favorites. I am going to town with these at the moment. So I know I've shown you these in a couple of last videos, and I won't show you this process again in future videos. I'll just direct you back to it. But at the moment, I have 2 of the stamp sets, and I know that there are at least 4 that coordinate with the 1 die set. So I like the size of these sentiments. They're kind of almost more like sub-sentiments, but I'm going to use them as my main one today. So I'm inking them up in the same orange VersaFine Clair ink that I used for my stamping on my card front. And I'm also going to do one in black because, if I'm honest, I wasn't sure what colour I wanted to go for. I hadn't used black anywhere else in my card today, so I wasn't sure if I wanted to introduce that colour, but I wasn't sure if the orange would stand out enough or just get lost. So there I have stamped them both out, and then I am going to use the matching die set, and you just line up those 4 squares, and that means every single one of those sentiments are lined up and ready to go, and then run them through your die cutting machine, and you have a whole lot of sentiments for a really long time. I just pop these in a little pottle on my desk, and I am good to go. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other companies that have come out with these. The ones that I've seen are definitely bigger, and I really like the size of these. So this piece of paper that I have stamped it on here is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of paper, so that you can see these are definitely smaller sort of sentiments, but I really like the size, and therefore I really like the price point as well, which is important to me when I'm choosing stamp sets or die sets, because they can get really, really pricey. So anyway, here I'm choosing out the same 2, and 1 in black and 1 in the orange because I wasn't sure which colour to go with. I'm adding a little bit of liquid glue. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish. That's the one that I put inside those glue bottles. And I just use a tiny little bit of glue, and that is going to create a really nice border there straight through some of my squares and some of my stamping. Then I'm going to put a little bit of foam tape on the back of these sentiments here, but I'm testing out, and I just felt like for this card that the black was a little too bold, but you could definitely use black. I just felt like I hadn't used it anywhere else in my card, so you can see I'm sitting there deciding, and I just really wanted to go with the orange one. This was a really nice kind of subtle orange sentiment, and I like that it didn't stand out overly a whole lot. It stood out enough because of the banner that it's on, but not too much to take over the rest of the stamping and the things that I had done on the card. Now, I just pulled out some of my Nuvo drops. I wanted some that would roughly match, and it actually just happened. I didn't even plan this, that I did have some that were similar. I'm doing some nice little drops all over the place. You could use gems, you can use Nuvo drops, you can use color pops, you can use any little dots or gems, sequins, anything that you have would fill in the spaces just nicely here. And that is my finished card for today. All of the links for the supplies that I can find that are still available, I will link down in the description box below. Let me know in the comment section what you think of this card today, and I really look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks, bye!